Okay, we're convening the Bandstand Convention Hall Special Events Committee meeting. And if you could reflect for the record, all the members are here today, with the exception of Ryan, who couldn't make it. For the agenda today, this is obviously the call to order and the roll call. We're going to go through and just approve the minutes. We'll see if there's any correspondence related to the agenda items, which I have not seen any, but that's next. Go through some old business, talk about the convention center. We have a couple folks on the committee looking at kind of where the vision for the convention center, where we're going to go, what we can and should invest in to meet the vision for it. We're going to talk a little bit about just some things about Grove Park and anything we want to tackle there, other priorities. And then citizen comment is welcome throughout actually the agenda. And we have many liaisons to the group, so we encourage you obviously to jump in at any time. And that's what we'll do. These typically last an hour, so we'll go ahead and get right started. Steve, thank you very much for preparing the minutes. Like any questions on the minutes or recommended changes from folks' recollection? Our last meeting was July 8th, 2019. We did not have a meeting in August, so we're approving the July 8th minutes. Any recommended changes or modifications?
Move approval. Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any objections? Okay, the meeting minutes of July 8th, 2019 are passed unanimously. Let's go ahead to the next item on the agenda. There was no correspondence. Ann, are you aware of any correspondence related to the agenda? Okay, no correspondence. So let's go right into the meat of our agenda today. And let's jump right into the first thing we wanted to talk about is a discussion on hourly rates for the convention center. And Steve took this action on, and there's for the public, there's a recommended set of rates, and we'll go ahead and discuss those. Steve, if you want to go ahead and jump in and
just
talk us
as
through.
a little bit of a preface to that, back in April, early May, we published a questionnaire that went to the stakeholders, the different folks working in the city government, as well as to the chamber and the folks that support Carol Everhart at the Chamber of Commerce, and got really good feedback. And I prepared a summary. I have some extra copies here that I can make available. And I've already talked to Ann Womack, and she will, I'll send her electronic version. It'll be embedded in the minutes so that you'll have availability online. But just to recap some of the really good feedback we got, and I just want to thank Sharon Lynn and Carol Everhart and their respective teams for taking the time to really put a lot of thought into this. And one of the suggestions that will lead into the next little discussion is about establishing an hourly rate that could be used to market some of the following activities, like a bingo night, a kids' movie night, exercise classes, education classes, and to, I think in many of the discussions we've had, we've come to the conclusion that there's a lot of potential for varied uses of the venue that we have here in this building to be a convention center as well as a community hall. And some of the feedback was to encourage us to also market the venue as a community hall to increase community activities, to collaborate with local organizations like the library, the YMCA, local businesses, to create community-based programs. And I think that ties a little bit into some of the discussion we had in our July 8th meeting about trying to, collaborate with the hotel community and others that have a vested interest in improving or increasing visitation to the city that would cause occupancy rates to go up in the hotels, and also to use the convention center as a real cornerstone for some of the activities. To create a more user-friendly set of guidelines to include parking and regulations to encourage increased usage of the venue during non-summer months, and that's certainly something that we've been looking into and will continue to look into. Collaborate with Camp Rehoboth to focus on theme weeks or a festival of some type and then increase advertising in local newspapers. So as you can tell, there was a lot of good input that went into that. And certainly one of the primary recommendations that's been made that we really took to heart was to establish hourly rates for nonprofit and for-profit organizations. And so that was, I did more than just do a division, a simple division of the daily rates to come up with hourly rates. And because I think we do have to recognize that there's, in many cases, going to be some type of additional services that will need to be provided. And so if you were to do a straight math drill, you wouldn't come up with $100 for profit and $75 for nonprofit. But comparing that rate to potentially what other venues in the local area might charge, based on the analysis that Peter led and I supported when we were looking at reestablishing rates for 2019, it came out to be fairly competitive. And we all certainly welcome input from Stephen Perry and Carol Everhart and her team to confirm or help us revise that rate. But this is proposed. It's not ready for prime time, but it is ready to be reviewed by the key stakeholders and provide us with feedback as to whether this would be in line with what they expected. I also included a half-day rate that may or may not really be helpful, but I thought for our review today, it might not be a bad idea to have that. So that's pretty much what I've proposed, and I welcome any input that folks have with regard to that.
How many hours did you look at for the half-day rate?
I was looking at 4. And again, it was that's where I pretty much went with more of a division, because you're going to spread whatever setup fee, just like we did with the daily rate, across all the hours, where it's kind of a fixed amount, and so it needed to be captured somewhat in the hourly rate without making it
So you went
unaffordable.
300 for 4 hours.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from the chamber. I know you're seeing these, just, so I'd love the first reaction to this. And again, a lot of this is designed to kind of get kind of our local groups to come in and use the convention center here, during the off-season and particularly during the week. So what's your thoughts right off the top?
It looks reasonable. Those rates look reasonable to me. And this week, we had a member who does aerobics, okay, or yoga on the beach. But she had a wedding party coming in, and she wanted a backup, a place that if the weather was bad, she could still have the wedding party, was going to do this yoga session. And that's the exact type of thing that happens from time to time, but we really have nowhere to refer them to. So, I look at those rates, and I think that is a simple non-setup. They're going to come in with yoga mats. They're probably going to play music on some kind of a recording device and do their yoga. So to me, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, it looks reasonable.
Do you see a demand,
Bob?
Carol, do you see a demand for the, a lot of groups asking for hourly rate places, or?
Well, because we don't have one, we don't push it or advertise it or promote it, but I think if we put it out there, that if you're looking for space for some kind of light recreational thing like that, or kids' dance class, that type of thing, if you're going into setup where they're having some kind of a meeting, I think that's going to require more work. I'm sure Stephen would agree with me with that. So that would be a little bit more money, but it looks reasonable to me. And it's not that we get a lot of requests, it's just that it happens from time to time, but we also look at the empty space and we think if we pushed it, we could probably fill it. Is that good enough?
That's good with me.
Okay.
What's the rest of the group? Richard, just kind of based on your experience with convention centers, et cetera, what do you think of these rates and this concept?
Looks like a bargain. No, in all seriousness.
Everything's a bargain
yeah.
at this convention center.
They do look really reasonable. I can't imagine even a nonprofit that needs to have an hour meeting balking at a $75 fee. I mean, that's what it costs to turn on the lights and cool the building. So I think they're totally reasonable.
And just, I think you said this, but just real quick, this would be year-round, right? I mean,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Well, yeah, but and again, but it's Monday through Thursday.
Yes, yes, but year-round, like off-season.
Yes.
I just want to add to what Richard said. Traditionally, a convention center will not have an hourly rate. Just set up, tear down, heating, lighting, cleaning.
Trash.
It's coming nowhere to cover it. And an hourly rate really isn't helping tourism. Half-day rate gets a little more, I think, closer to it. But on balance, we're looking at a community center versus a convention center. And that's not wrong. I think we need it. We need to get more usage out of the convention center, both for the locals, the nonprofits, and for the tourism. And I think additional marketing, we're gonna have to, I think, look at some management. No offense, Steve, but I think we need a software package and we need maybe some marketing. And so we need to refocus on the convention center, but we ought to realize that there's failure of success. We could get a lot of people in there for hours and lose a lot more money.
Carol has a.
Oh, Carol, please, yeah.
That reminded me. One thing you do have to consider is, let's say you rent it to someone for an hourly rate or a half-day rate, and then a big convention comes in. In other of the hotel industry, it has been with the understanding that if within 2 weeks of whatever our reservation was at whatever rate with them, that if they got a big convention in there or big usage of the facility, we understood we'd have 2 weeks to readdress it. So you wouldn't want to rent it for a half a day or an hourly rate and then have to give up a big convention. So that policy would really need to be looked at.
A lot of communities have priority, and
That's
it's
what I'm
in their
talking about.
rental agreement. And the greater the impact of the community, the higher the priority.
Yeah, I think what Carol's touching on is our booking policies, and success is, our worst enemy. And obviously, if we start booking single-day events more than 3 or 4 months out and we preclude ourselves from a larger event, that's a problem. So, one thing we might want to put on the to-do agenda is some booking policies for timetables for those kinds of events.
You probably have to rewrite the leasing agreement for that. That's not just a policy, because they sign a contract saying, we're gonna give you this space at this time for this amount of money.
Yeah.
That's not a policy, you have to change the leasing agreement.
Yeah, the booking policy actually sits before you get to a leasing agreement. So it's kind of a booking guidelines of how you would look at new business coming in. I mean, this is just obviously for discussion, but many convention centers don't take anything local that doesn't have X amount of room nights inside of a year. I mean, obviously, our timetables would be totally different, but it would be a guideline before you get to signing a lease with a contract, so that you're not breaking contracts or lease agreements.
We don't have those policies right now, correct? I mean, that's not it. It's just, we don't.
We haven't needed them.
We have like legislation and then contracts. We don't have like kind of the in-between policies for anything really in the city, right?
Just my gut feeling.
Not that we shouldn't.
Right.
Just my gut feeling,
Yeah.
on a policy like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna create any good feelings with people if you're saying, hey, we're open for hours, but if you're not good enough, we're gonna bump you for someone else. I mean,
Yeah.
I would look
Oh,
at
I
that and be
agree.
like, I'm not gonna do that.
That's why you're headed more towards the community center.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's a really good point, actually, while you're up there.
Yeah.
Stay. Hey, while you're up there, stay up. Or you can sit, whatever you want to do. Maybe you could just give us a little bit idea where we are with bookings. Kind of just give us your, just off the top of your head, like what the weekly's looking like versus, because I think that's really what this is targeted for, maybe the
I just met
weekly.
with Kyle and Richard, we talked about that a little bit. I mean, during the week, that place is empty. I mean, whenever we do have a weekday event, it's usually on a Wednesday for some odd reason. I guess people like the middle of the week. But it's unless someone's setting up for another event and they've paid for the day, it's empty during the week, really. You know, the vast majority of the events are always Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a shame that it sits empty, but
How did this summer compare with the last?
oh, we were busier. We were already ahead of bookings last year. We just last week we just surpassed last year's bookings. This week alone, we've had actually this past week we've had a lot of weekday usage. We've had an event every 2 days there last week, so it's kind of fun. It's really crazy for them
Like
to.
conventions or just one-off?
Fundraisers, we
usage?
had the Autism Delaware do an event on Friday. Then we had an event on Sunday with the Sunrise Rotary Group, really cool event. Then we have an event this Wednesday, Senior Beach Day. Then we have an event this Friday with the Humane Association. So it's been every 2 days. It's fundraisers. And then October is completely booked.
You said the last one, when we met up too, you said most of the majority of the actual events too are local nonprofits. I think you said like 90% are local nonprofits.
Vast majority, yeah, fundraisers, community groups, stuff like that. So, Humane Association will be here, 26th. The bingo for Humane Association. So,
Thursday night, so.
But it's good. I mean, we haven't had anyone ever, you know, not come back. We really haven't. I mean, one group kind of outgrew us. That was the only one. Everyone's always like, "We'll
So
come
our
back."
rates are really working.
I think the people really like the rates they are now. Like you said, it's a total bargain.
They
Total
should
bargain.
like
I
the rates,
mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Do you have just the overall numbers real quick? Max?
Yeah, like last year. Last year in total, the first year we were in operation, we did $86,040, and as of this week, we're at $87,450. So, and I'm getting calls still about events people want to do in November, December. So we'll probably go above 90.
Great. Okay.
And one of the things that we probably should consider because, of, being at the tail end of September is what we want to do for 2020 rates. There's been some informal conversation about holding them firm, consistent with 2019 rates for right now, as we continue to explore other options that could be more formalized in 2020. And then maybe for 2021, we could look at a different rate structure.
Well, that's a good point. And what's your recommendation on the next step for the hourly? And then I'd like to come back.
Well, I think that the next step for the hourly is, again, I was thinking maybe that because of where we are in the calendar year, we may not be able to get a lot of advertising of that during the remainder of 2019, but clearly to incorporate it into 2020. And I'd defer to Steve Perry and Carol to see if they think we should go ahead and supplement the current rate structure for the remainder of the year, or just have that be something that we consider for 2020.
Yeah, and I had questions about the rate structure itself too. Is it going to be like any hour of any day, Monday through Friday, they can pick? Or I was going to suggest maybe we could have it from 8:30 to 4:30 when staff is already here on premises. Because I can't imagine if like someone wants to rent from 7 to 8 a.m., we're going to have city employees just come in for 1 hour.
Yeah, I thought it
or
would be
the
during
evening.
normal business
Yeah, I mean,
hours.
if we could specify that from 8:30 to 4:30 when staff is here, because it'd be no trouble for anyone just to pop over for an hour. But if
Right,
it's
and
gonna
I
be
would
like-
say that could be addressed when people call to make and just say, either that's too early, that's too late, or it's
Yeah.
right during the right time.
Or it might be nice just to put it out there, like these are the hourly rates during these hours. I don't know, just so it'll be
What
less
do you
confusing.
consider the hour include? The whole building or just the main hall?
That's another question too. Yeah, is because the side rooms now are $150 a day. Do they get the entire hall for that $75, or because it'd be kind of silly to have them pay $150 for the side room when they're paying $75 for the main room?
Well, I mean, that's a level of complexity I hadn't really thought of. When we were talking about establishing hourly rates, it was for the main area.
I mean, if it's just a small group coming in for an hour, they probably wouldn't want to be in that gigantic.
Right, and that's pretty much, I took it upon myself to create a half-day rate. But I think the initial focus was, to establish an hourly rate for like the yoga classes and things like that, where people would come in and just need some place to meet for an hour. So, I mean, we could certainly establish something that's a little bit more informal, I think, for 2019, and clearly, have it be more expansive for 2020.
Let's reverse engineer it, and let's say the farmer's market is going to go in once a week during the off-season. Would they qualify for an hourly rate? How many hours are they open for?
Straddle the middle of the day, though.
Yeah, well, I know, I'm just trying to say.
No, I know.
How do you fit this in so it's a win-win?
I mean, I would look at more of that being a half-day rate.
Okay?
Benny Santini, I'm the president of the Road Beach Jazz Festival. Just a suggestion, what happens if we only have this conference room hourly? And if somebody asks, can we get the hall? Then you can consider renting the hall. Because that would be awful inexpensive for $75 to rent that hall. That's great. First of all, if I was here for an hour or two with my committee, I wouldn't need that big hall. I would like to reserve I call
Conference room?
what's that? One at the corner of the carpet? Yeah, what's that? Conference suite. Conference suite, yeah, maybe just a conference suite, you could rent that out for $75 an hour.
What's the size of that, the square footage of that? Do you have,
I don't have the square footage, but it fits about 100 people.
Yeah, it's,
yeah, that's,
for an hour, for a person coming in for an hour, I don't think there's gonna be hundreds of people coming in for an hour.
so it would benefit if people wanted to come in and do yoga, or you could fit people in there, so.
Conference room, and then even in the evening, if you could, because some people wanna have meetings in the evening, which wouldn't be much to have that room set up.
Right, but that was my point.
I was just,
Then it's 150 for the day, so then you would,
And city staff would have to come in for an hour, just in the evening, I don't think that would be feasible. Payment overtime.
Yeah, jump in, yeah, anybody, Edward too, if you want to.
I absolutely agree. You have to have a policy on this, and it should only be during normal business hours.
Right.
Okay, if you're going to rent something for anything short of a day, it's normal business hours. It's Monday through Friday, whenever it works for the staff. So I just want to make sure I agree with that. And these policies typically, sometimes they go to square footage, but I think with the hall you just have rooms. You have side rooms, you have the little conference room, you've got the hall. So you could set your rate based on that, what they need. And if there's setup, that's a whole different deal. If he's got to arrange for chairs and that's a whole different additional cost because that's man hours. So that being said, when you were talking about raising the rates for the hall in general, like if we wanted to rent it for a day, the saying is don't get off a winning horse. And right now, it's working. At these rates, for the daily rate, it's working. When we tried to go up too much, the horse wasn't winning. But right now, you got a winning horse. So I would love to see you hold for a year.
Right. So, I mean, this is great information, but if you look at the published rate schedule that we have for week, and we don't talk about the use of side rooms. We set it at $550 for nonprofit and $600 for profit, Monday through Thursday.
All the list of prices I give to everyone has all the side rooms listed.
Right, but I'm talking about what we're working from here. What we talked about here. So, I mean, I'm open to do, I wasn't aware of the more expansive sheet that you work from.
about taking a page out of the chief's book, 4-hour minimum, 3-hour minimum, when we have to rent a police officer for our jazz festival. I believe it's 4-hour minimum. Oh, sorry. I believe it's a 4-hour minimum for the police. Is that true? 3 hours. 3 hours, yeah. So if I want to have the police officer here for our jazz festival, we have to pay for at least 3 hours, even though we need them for 2. So maybe you might want to consider for an hourly rate that it's a minimum of whatever you decide, 2 hours, 3 hours. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then you're getting up. to
So,
that, but
so
sure.
I just want to kind of get back to how this all came about. This all came about because Carol Everhart suggested that we be able to accommodate small groups with small needs. And that's what I've tried to do based on all the, so if we want to make it much more comprehensive, I think that's a great idea, but that's a different conversation than what we've been having. And so, I'm happy to revisit it, and I'm happy to work with both Carol and Stephen to see what that should look like so I can present it back to the group. So we're clearly not ready to take this forward in any way. And so I'll make arrangements with the two of you for the three of us to get together for a brief period of time and get that all worked up, and then I can bring it back for next month's meeting.
One other question, the $1,000 for the weekend for nonprofit, does that include the kitchen, the side rooms? Okay, so if an organization come in here that's going to rent this facility, they're going to need those. So if you add that to the rent, that me as a nonprofit would have to consider that expense. So if I'm at $1,000 a day just for the convention center, how much is it for the kitchen?
Yeah, it's 175.
Okay, how much is it for the conference room?
They're 150.
Okay.
Conference suite's 250.
Okay, at 250 and 125, what about that side room? We put our bar in? Is there anything, does that go with the convention center?
It's 150.
Okay, so by the time we get done, we're 1,500, 1,600 a day, not 1,000. Okay, because that's what we would have to consider if we're going to do something here. If I bring a seminar in, I want to be here for the weekend, a jazz seminar, say, I would have to know exactly what it's going to cost me, not just $1,000.
And the way it happens now is people call you, they explain what their needs are, and then you review with them the pricing. So that type of dialogue would continue to happen, but I think what we need to do is look at, on a continuum, I mean, it's highly unlikely that somebody that wants to come in for an hour is going to need to use the kitchen, but it may be that they don't need the main room, maybe they just need one of the side rooms, and we should have a rate for that. And so this is a really good conversation that we're having now, and I look forward to, making it much more user-friendly as far as people being able to understand what the options are.
And I'm getting ahead of myself, but to bring in a major conference, you need parking on the off-season. I don't know if the city could say to me, Denny, since you're renting it for 4 days, for so much money, you can have the parking lot. So our constituents, our attendees have a place to park. There's nothing worse than having something that you want to success, and the city is so crowded, people are complaining they can't park to get here in time. It holds the show up. So if we could rent the parking lot on the off-season for a fee, or we would have a crew there charging our constituents $5 to park, we'll donate the money back to the city, to the firehouse, to whatever you need. So I don't know if that could be considered, because that will make it more attractive to bring bigger venues in because they know they have the parking for their people. Just a thought. I know it'd be hard to do. It'd be really hard to do.
Never
but
thought about that.
I'd be more than happy to pay whatever you would want for that parking facility.
While you're here, what would you like to see inside the building that we don't have?
That's a loaded question.
I ask
No,
it
I know,
knowing
I'm
it's a
saying,
loaded question.
see, when we come in here, it costs us $26,000 a show to produce, and that includes everything. But the bulk of that is the sound, the lights. We have to pay for the video. You don't have anything to offer us. We have to bring everything in, run the lines. It's a lot of labor and a lot of time. So if they could invest into something small, like if Mid-South Audio come in and said, look, we can get basic speakers in, we can run the lines, so all we have to do is attach it, make it more attractive for us, it'll cost us less money. That would really help.
What's the
New seats would
budget?
really help. New chairs would really help. And we would be more than happy to raise money to get you guys new chairs.
Yeah, the chairs are terrible.
Yeah, I
Heard
mean,
that
we get a
again
lot of
and again.
complaints about that.
Come up the most.
So it's, it's
Just generally,
those things.
Sound and light budget, just how many?
Geez, I really don't know. I don't know what that would cost. You would have to bring in, like Mid-South Audio, Kevin would be,
Yeah.
he would be the guy.
Just not to put you
Basics.
more on the spot, Peter, this is what these guys are looking at and going to report out on. I mean, not with specifics at this point, they just started their analysis, but looking at kind of what we do need, what we should invest in, what we should go forward with in terms of the budget process that's starting now. So we're going to look at that
Yeah,
a
we
little
have to
bit
bring in a
further,
stage. We have
so-
to increase the
Yeah.
size of the stage because the stage is too small for the type of acts that we bring in. World-class acts, they need a stage so big, so we have to pay for that to come in, bring that in. You might want to have that here to rent. If you want to have a staging, Denny, it's going to cost you $500 to rent it for the bidet. Okay, fine, put it up. I mean, that would help too, because the stage is really
You'd
too small.
almost prefer to rent from us than go through all the.
Sure, I'd rather rent from this. I'd rather give the money back to the city. I mean, seriously. But this will be my 26th year doing this here in this facility. And I got to tell you, you guys are wonderful. Chuck is just unreal. His men have helped us. That they just can't do enough for you. I mean, this is a wonderful spot. And I can't see why it's not booked all the time. But you have to make it attractive for the person coming in to book it. Parking's during the summer, forget it. I know you can't do anything during the summer. But off
So
season,
the parking garage would be a great addition
Oh.
for you.
don't even go there.
Different story.
I was just in Philadelphia at a restaurant south because a lot of the artists were there. And right across the street, there's this huge parking lot. And it just helped that part of the city grow because they all had parking in that part of the city. I don't want to take any money of your time. You guys have any
I just
questions
wanted
for
to
me?
say,
Sure.
Being a photographer, I know that audio and video and any kind of stuff like that, lighting is sound is extremely expensive. I was gonna ask too, Steve, I don't want to say that you're a unique case too, but how many large situations like Jazz Fest do we have around each year for that situation? Like if we were to purchase the audio and all that stuff, it would be what would be the payback eventually for us?
Well, I bet you the film festival would come in and do something during the year. I know I would. I wanted to come in Columbus weekend of this year, but talking with Carol and the hotels, you're pretty crowded, pretty busy for this weekend. And I asked Chuck to ask the city if we can have the parking for our attendees because we would put music here because we'd extend the Jazz Festival for that whole week from Friday night before Columbus Day to the following Sunday after. But our people wouldn't be able to park.
Yeah.
But if I got the parking lot, I'd have booked it because
I do like the a la carte thing. That's actually the renting of the parking lot, in my opinion, would be a great thing. It's a win-win. I don't see why that would be an issue.
and the
But yeah,
person wouldn't have to man it. Whoever our people would be there. If they have a ticket, they can park. Because I would charge $5 on the ticket and then donate that back to the city, how many spots there are.
You're off-season, parking's free, but you just can't find it.
That's right. Jazz, that's why a lot of times we have to hold the show up, and that makes it later at night for your guys to get out of here instead of getting out at 12. They're out 1:30 because the show started late.
But a lot of your sound is specific for each kind of act. But if we had some pretty damn good speakers,
The speakers would be the most important thing. As far as a soundboard, I wouldn't get involved in that because they're changing all the time.
So you're looking for something that's a plug and play. There's speakers, all
Speakers
set up,
and a decent lighting
you
package,
plug your soundboard into.
decent light, and you could rent it to me.
Like
Say, Denny, you want to
uplighting?
use those lights? It's $1,000 for the weekend or whatever. I mean, but
Were you looking for more uplighting or more actual like ceiling mounted light
it
situations?
would be more not uplighting, ceiling.
Ceiling, okay.
Yes, to enhance the show. That's what it is. But now, some of the artists come in with a thumb drive, and the new soundboards they just plug it in, boom, and it's set. I mean, and that's where they're headed. But you don't want to buy a $150,000 soundboard; it'd be obsolete in 2 years or
Exactly.
a year.
That's where my concern was. Is you're looking at just for that section, probably like you said, $150,000 for that. amount
The
of
sound
equipment.
engineers in the back of the room operating the whole thing on his iPhone. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Pardon me?
acoustics.
Yes, they're listening to it and they're changing.
No, I meant
No,
the
how
hall.
are our acoustics? Yeah.
You would
It's
just-
a lot better than I thought it would be, but how is it for you?
The acoustics in there are fabulous. Very good.
That's what I was talking to a lot of the folks here for the Polka Motion. They're like, the acoustics are just fantastic.
Perfect. We have no complaints.
Yeah, I thought that was,
The only point complaint we have are the seats.
for music.
We learned not so good for
Seats.
social events like weddings.
Because
more people are
talking.
talking here.
Oh,
You can hear every single person talking
Yeah.
at the same level.
We learned that today.
It's not good for this.
And
For music, it's great.
it is. And then, like if I'm renting your kitchen, there's nothing. It's just a stove and a refrigerator. There's no pots, pans, this, that, boom, bam. I mean, you're renting me a kitchen, but I got to bring everything in. Where other places, when you rent, it's all there. Not just a thought. I mean, it makes it more attractive to bring in maybe a restaurant festival. I mean,
What we need to hear.
yeah, just those minor things. I mean, but because the facility, I love it. Are you kidding? I was so upset when we closed went for those 2 years, but nothing you can do about it. I'm glad we did. But yeah, because it's called the Rehoboth Beach Jazz Festival, not called the Louis Bethany Dewey. It's called the Rehoboth Beach Jazz Festival. That's what we love about it. You know. But anyway, thank
Okay.
you guys for
Well,
listening.
thanks.
Any
Kyle, do
questions?
you have one
I
more
was gonna
question,
say-
just
yeah,
to get on the
Steve, so
agenda?
you said the kit
Yeah.
about, it goes on with what he was saying about the kitchen. You said earlier that is very also underutilized, and there it's not often utilized, rather not underutilized, but often utilized. Yeah. They just, yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Well, that's a great discussion. So just to close it out, what I think I heard the next steps are is, Steve, you're going to go ahead and follow up with a few folks to answer some of the great questions that came up and report back to us next meeting on whatever you learned and maybe with an updated set of parameters.
Yep.
Just kind of one concept real quick, at least in my head, but I'm totally open to suggestion. Well, two concepts. One, I actually, and we can discuss this, so I'm just putting out as the opening ante. Is that the correct word? I'm not a poker player, but the opening, whatever. I don't see us raising rates next year. I'm one that likes to have stability for a couple years and then assess kind of where you are and determine, rather than keep changing things all the time. It confuses our stakeholders. The communication gets disrupted. So I personally, I think that this group, I'd like to hear from the group, obviously, and I'll go with whatever the majority of these smart people think. But I'm kind of thinking that we don't want to raise rates again, or propose raising rates for next year. Let's see how things go. Things are going well right now, getting a lot of the right bookings. We're managing it, and we're also looking at what we do next with the convention center. So to disrupt that, I think with higher rates at this point, when we really don't know why we need higher rates. Like, why are we going to raise the rates? Do we want to make an investment back in the convention center? Do we want to offset our expense? Like, we don't even know why we would be raising rates at this point. So let's spend the time to study what we need, why we need it, and then in a more calculated way, determine exactly why and how much would raise the rates. That's my thoughts, but I'm open to suggestion from this group, because I think I'm jumping around the agenda. This is really on the priorities discussion, but that's where I am, open to thoughts.
Agreed.
Yeah, I completely agree for all the reasons you stated, and the fact that, Stephen's already getting requests to book in 2020, and he's got to have something to be able to tell these folks. And
Walked the guy to the kitchen this morning, he's like, where's my contract for January? I'm like, yeah, we're working on it.
And based on all the input that we see from Carol and Emily and the other folks with the chamber, it's, we seem to have been able to correct getting a little out of line and have brought business back in. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think once we start turning down a lot of events because we're overbooked, that's the time we would consider raising the rates up.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
I move that we maintain the current 2019 convention center rates for 2020.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, there's a majority, or excuse me, an anonymous decision to keep the rates the same for 2020. Although I kind of find it fun to change them and have Steve react, but all right, that's what the group thinks. So the consensus of this group and the vote of this group is anonymously to keep the rates the same for 2020.
Sure, that'd be very, very well received.
Okay, all right, well, that's our recommendation we'll take forward then. And this isn't part of the vote, but with one exception, we're going to still look at the hourly rates. So we'll look forward to Steve, you and the group coming forward, Peter, whoever's working on this next
I'm going
meeting.
to keep Peter's good name out of this.
Okay.
Perhaps an evening rate, to the point,
That's-
after 4:30, right?
That's worth thinking about. That's a
Yeah.
really good point.
If you guys need
Okay.
any advice, anytime you want to call me, you call me.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Whatever I can do, I'd be more than happy to help.
Okay.
May I ask a loaded question? Sure. Is True Blue competitive or complementary?
No, No, I mean, they do what they do, and that's a good thing. They do a different type of music that we do, because unfortunately, we can't fill the house with that kind of music anymore, because it's dying off. But
So the whole is greater than the
well,
sum
I
of
mean,
the parts?
if that's what they want to do, I mean, let them do it. I mean, I'd be more happy for them. I wish they would have a different weekend for them. Well, it'd be, I think, more beneficial for them.
Okay.
Than us. It's not hurt us at all. Matter of fact, it enhances us because it's bringing in other people that normally wouldn't come for the type of music we bring. So they bring in a different music, which brings other people into towns, which really helps. So it's a good thing. But it would be better if we had it 2 different weekends, because we would help promote them. There's no question. That'd be great for the city to have 2 different. They would start small, of course, for the first time, but eventually they might grow like we have. So no, I think that they do a great job what they do, and they help the children. It's a wonderful thing.
Great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for all the feedback from everyone. Good decision there, and we'll look forward to further discussion on the hourly rates at the next meeting. So thanks, folks. Next item on, oh, yeah, please, Stephen, yeah.
If you do consider rates, just to let you guys know, I usually get requests for contracts about 6 months in advance. So it would, if you could do it like February, March,
Good advice.
early in the year to do it for the next year. People usually want to come back like right away the next year, so I try to do the contracts as early as possible. But I've been doing it
Okay.
about 6 months in advance.
Okay.
We got you in
Okay.
forever. You're locked in.
We're going to announce the new lineup.
But that motion
Okay.
doesn't preclude working on the hourly.
Yeah, no,
Right.
that's completely
That's
separate.
right,
Sure.
right.
And
Good.
then just to answer your question, you asked like how many groups come in that rent extra equipment. We've had
Yeah.
6 this year.
That rented extra equipment.
Not a ton.
Okay.
I don't know whether that's because we don't have it and they don't want to do it, or there's not the need for it.
Mhm.
6, okay. Would you mind sending out the report that shows the list of everybody that's rented and when, just to this group following this meeting? Sure, that's fine. Send it, yeah. Thanks a lot. Okay, cool. That was a really good discussion, and thanks for the work you did, Steve, and everybody who contributed on the survey on the questionnaire as well as the rates. Thank you. Incredibly helpful to everyone. All right, let's go ahead to old business item B, and that is the update on the convention center strategy. And Richard and Kyle have been working this agenda item, and just real quick on background is, we've had a lot of discussions in this group and in the commission, what is our convention center? Is it convention center, community center? What do we do with this center going forward? What's our vision and what kind of investments? And one of the things we asked these guys to look at, well, all those things, but also timing-wise, we're getting ready to go into, our budget season, budget formulation season for the 2021 city fiscal year. So would love to have any ideas or recommendations from you on the low-hanging fruit or even high-hanging fruit on what we should invest in for the convention center. So you guys take it away with what you found and what's next and where we're going.
So Kyle and I were appointed to this committee in July, and we felt like we needed to get some foundational background. So we had a great meeting with the chamber with Carol and, oh God, I just went blank. I'm so sorry. Emily, yes, popped in my head. Great meeting in understanding some of the background of what their relationship with our community convention center is, the kinds of requests they get. And then this morning we had a good meeting with Stephen Perry, understanding what his take on the activity. And as he was quick to point out, we're very busy on weekends, we're dead during the week, something we did know. But it's good to also learn about the kinds of groups that actually come in. Now, I want to preface this part of the report by saying we are totally reactive with this convention center right now. We don't put anything out in terms of, we don't have a booking engine, we don't have a booking agent, we don't make calls, say, do you have? So everything that we really book is reaction to either the chamber, and the chamber refers to Stephen, and whatever comes over the transom. Having said that, we have a nice, well-rounded group of events, from home shows to performance groups. But I think Kyle's and my aha moment was when Stephen started telling us about these week-long continuing medical education conferences. I think currently we have 3, a doctor's group, a dentist group, and the Delaware Institute of Materials Research. And all three of those groups use the building for the week and use hotel rooms. People come in from out of town. So Kyle and I looked at each other and said, aha, we need more of those because they're off-season, midweek business. So in order to get from point A to point B, you've got to have somebody that's dialing for dollars. You've got to figure out how those bookings have come in currently, and then where do we get more? Where do we get something like those? We also talked very informally, Colin and I, that we are a community center. We can have a sign up that says convention center. We are not a convention center. You've got the father of convention centers to my right here. We are definitely a community center. So whether we want to, face that fact and rename ourselves, or do we want to paint that big vision statement and say, we're currently a community center, wanting to be a convention center, and what does that take? So we're not at that point to say what it takes to get to the convention center, because I think you'll recall one of the important audience groups that we want to meet with are the hotels, which we needed this foundational education before we got together with the hotels, which we feel we now have. But I think Lisa's also, has that fiscal mind. Like, if we were going to do something today, what would it be? Kyle, the easiest thing is, let's budget for chairs. Let's show that we're doing something.
Yeah,
Let's buy new chairs, for God's sakes. And show that we're serious about getting people in and getting people comfortable.
Just get them in there.
Yeah, just get new chairs in there. Kyle, please, feel free to.
Richard already made some great points, and probably a lot more eloquently than I was. But yeah, I would basically say that as we stand right now, that we are definitely a community center, and not there are some conventions, but not as many. And in order to, if we have to decide what we want to do, and in order to get to being a more convention center, if we want to have more conventions, we're going to have to probably do some marketing and some stuff like that as well. The chairs, by far, are definitely the biggest thing that had come up in conversation within multiple people. And that was also with feedback from people that were having events there, which I find is, fairly important, that the people that have already had events there, that's their biggest concern mostly, was the chairs. And it seems like a very small thing to do that will benefit, a larger group.
All users.
Yeah, every person that's going to utilize that area. Sorry, I lost my little thing here. And then the other situation was the parking as well. That's the other situation that's come up mostly, and that's don't really have a solution quite for that. I think we talked about, it was really interesting when you said about renting the actual parking lot out. That's not something that actually had come to my mind at all. I think that could be beneficial. I have to explore that and see what anybody else would think and how that would affect the city and whatnot. But that could be a situation where then you could then offer parking to people, because people aren't necessarily concerned about the price of parking often, but the actual ability to park. But yeah, I think that was essentially, like I said, you said most of the stuff a little more eloquently than me, but
Did anyone talk about events that we could help create, or, maybe co-promote or work with a promoter? Because I'm not sure some of the things are just going to happen. I think they need a catalyst.
yeah. Is that a thing we could also, is purely a question, is that a thing that we could work with like, say, Main Street or the Chamber possibly, for them to promote some sort of events?
Are you talking about creating an event, or are you talking about marketing what you have? If you're talking
I'm
about,
talking about getting new events in here and working with a promoter and say, hey, we'll do this, you do that. Because I don't think when somebody thinks about doing something, we're high up on their list with what's happening in the county.
well, one thing that you talked about that I think is really proper is talk to the hotels. They're already spending money on advertising. They're already trying to get groups here. We're already spending money on advertising and marketing for the area. So that might be something that we can, join together on to make that happen. We have a task force, a motel task force. That group can be brought together. You can, talk to them about what they're already reaching out to, because we don't want to spend money we don't have to. okay? But if we can enhance it by adding to it or working together, you know, I think that's the smartest route to go from our vantage point. We have marketing money, and we have, in the past, years ago, we did work with the city to market Convention Hall. So that opportunity's there.
I just keep going back to food. I mean, this town, this culinary coast, life tastes better here is terrific. And we're getting the brew pubs and the restaurants. And that building could enhance that theme. And maybe it's a winter market, maybe it's every other month, but I think we or some people in town need to get some people together. Now, Main Street, maybe that's the way to do it, but I call everyone's attention that we had a great event, Meterless Monday, and it basically
That
was
was incredible.
done by the business, a few people in the business community.
Who ran that, by the way? Or who initiated that?
The Pond Pete and.
Pardon me?
Pete and Ale House Adam. I
Adam
think.
Newman, yeah.
Yeah.
Adam
So it
Newman,
was
yeah.
just two of the businesses that
Yeah,
got
just got
together.
together and
That was
promoted it,
awesome.
yeah.
What a
Yeah,
great
that was
idea.
incredible.
It was a
It was
good
great.
event. yeah.
Really was.
Let me mention this,
That was
that
really
goes
cool.
hand in hand with the parking. So if the parking committee is talking about anything that impacts the current parking rate or length of time or anything like that, so I think the parking here is critical with what you're, I'll use Sewage as an example. So this year, we moved vendors inside the hall instead of the fiddlers. So they're going to come in, they're going to unload, they're going to be set up for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We rented
I'm
a
sorry,
hall
for what? For Seaway?
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for Seawitch.
Oh, gotcha.
Inside the hall, okay? It's just like a home show, only it's with artisans and crafters. So they need to load, unload, park, all that type of thing. Having the ability, if you don't have a parking garage, if you can rent that space out there, that's major. I don't know if it would work for our event because there's so much equipment that has to come in that's not parking friendly, but it would help just so that they can park, unload, go park someplace else that's set aside, and then load up again. That's critical. So whether it's a show like that or it's a week-long, I think your week-long is what I'm hearing you really like. I'm sure that's what Stephen likes, is having that week-long association meeting in there. That you do through your hotels and motels. That's what you do that through. So we can help with that if you see it as a help.
I like the a la carte option too. I think that like an a la carte option for rates
Yes.
for everything is beneficial because everybody is not one size fits all when it comes to the convention center. There's very small groups and very large groups. So a one size fits all approach won't work for everything. So if there's an a la carte option, then, you know, people can utilize the kitchens or the parking or if, you know, or the conference rooms. Yeah, or even you might have 3 small groups that want to utilize different conference rooms at the same time. And then you can actually have multiple bookings at the same time. If somebody wants to go in and do yoga and then do like a workout class, you could do it at the same time and they wouldn't affect each other. And then you have multiple streams of revenue at that point.
Great. Agreed. Yeah, thanks, Carol. That's awesome.
Last year, Jazz Festival, we, of course, have people come in with buses, artists. Sometimes the bus is too expensive, and they will have big SUVs come in, 3 or 4 of them. So we had the bus area
State your
reserved.
name. I'm sorry, protocol.
I'm sorry.
For the record, I'm sorry, yeah. Say it.
Dennis
Say-
Santangini,
Yep.
yes. And so, so I said to the artist, well, just park right there, we have it. Well, they got a parking ticket. It cost us $340 for a parking ticket. So that really has to be addressed for instance, even this year. Are we or are we not allowed to utilize that space? And nobody seems to be able to give me an answer. So I'm just asking you, who can I go to ask?
Chris Johnson runs that process, who's the communication director. Is that correct,
where the
Stephen,
bus
or?
Parking area is?
Our lot here?
Yes.
Yeah, go to Chuck.
I
Oh,
did.
Chuck,
I
sorry.
got tickets.
Go to Chuck, we can take care of those tickets.
We, I gave him the Chuck and he did not. He tried, he said, yeah, I can't do anything about it.
I wish Chief was here, actually.
Yeah, I know,
Well, I guess
really,
he
yeah,
actually
yeah.
doesn't do the
So I just
enforcement.
need to know that our
You're
people,
talking the city
What's that?
side?
Yeah,
in the
he sh-
parking
that shouldn't
lot
be a
of the convention center,
Right.
Yeah.
where it has buses only,
Oh, okay.
that area there is open for our artists to park, so they can get right into the convention center.
You need to let Chuck know beforehand. So
I
we
did.
can-
Poor Chuck, his hands were tied. He said, I'll try and do something this year, but I was just wondering, I should go to Chuck then?
Could you take that back just and coordinate it? Would you mind, Stephen?
Yeah, we already have.
Yeah,
So
okay,
we've been.
great.
I share the
Thanks.
convention center schedule with police and
Yeah,
parking.
yeah,
And Chuck, we pleaded with them, you know we have an event coming up.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a random bus parking, come to us first, we'll be the liaison. So hopefully we're working on it.
Oh, good, thank you.
okay, thanks, super.
You need to come back more often, you'll get more perks.
We would if we didn't have to build this convention center. I would do shows, I would even do shows during the summer, like
Great.
Walt Disney House.
That's what we want.
It'd be wonderful.
Okay, so really appreciate the work from both of you guys as well. I think it'd be great if, kind of continue what you're doing. You're talking to all the right folks, and it sounds like a really important group to get with, and it sounds like maybe Carol can help organize this with the hotel group. So, okay, good. So we'll leave you guys to that, and look forward to your next iterative update next month at our next meeting, which we'll schedule here shortly. Just in terms of time, I'm going to move on. If there's no final thoughts on what you guys have done so far, again, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Grove Park. I'm actually going to defer that to next month. I put that on there. It's just a couple things I wanted to talk about, Grove Park and some of the policies relative to Grove Park, things like the alcohol policy and just things like that I wanted to get some feedback on, but I do want to defer that to next month again, so.
May I just
and then,
make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think before next month, we should all spend some time looking at what's happening in the park.
That's a great idea.
I think you'll be surprised.
Yeah, I'd say it's a really good point. Walk by, look at it.
It's a great asset, but I think you ought to see how it's being used and how it's maybe being abused or maybe not, but take a look at it.
I think, Peter, you hit the point as to why it's on the agenda. It's a great asset. And are we, yeah, exactly. I'm parroting your words because I think that's true. And, is there more opportunities there for the community, for the city, for
It's getting a lot
anything?
of use that I don't think the city knows about.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we'll have that as an agenda item next meeting. And I just wanted to open this up for folks. Is there any other priority? We have a lot on our agenda and a lot of busy people on the committee, as with all the committees, the volunteers that we have here. I know it's you're all running businesses, et cetera. So is there anything else you want to focus on, or do you think we should kind of stick to just the 2 or 3 things that we do have as priorities right now and continue iterating on those items and come up with some good recommendations? Or is there anything else you want to add to our priorities for the upcoming 3 months, 3 meetings or so?
I think this is pretty good because each of these items have long tails.
Yeah.
Like, Peter really had an aha when he said we should be working with event producers to help create events. I mean, that's a whole nother
Maybe
kettle
Peter
of
could
fish.
come to the hotel meeting if he's available with you and
Yeah.
take that on and see if there's something to, he could sponsor there or work with, he could work with the hotels to sponsor.
I've had some
Great.
discussions with some of the hotel people.
Great, good one. Okay. Any other, one more public comment? Yep.
You rent Grove Park?
Yes.
Free.
Nope, you rent it. Yep. I think you can go there and just
Rent the pavilion.
have a
you
picnic or
rent the
whatever,
pavilions,
but yeah,
right.
you rent the pavilion. Certainly you can go there.
Personal use.
You don't
Yeah,
have to pay to
personal
go to the
use.
park,
Yeah,
you pay to
exactly.
use the pavilion.
Every little child has to pay $5 to get on a swing set, so that's not a bad, no, I'm kidding. Yeah,
Just
you
made
rent the
that up,
pavilion. I
just
just
so-
made that up it's off the record. Okay, everybody got that? All right. Okay, so we'll stick with the agenda items that we have and just iterate and go from there. And I would ask for the next meeting, though, if anybody else has ideas on what we should be incorporating into or proposing as part of the 2021 budget process, come prepared to talk about that, particularly the convention center. Chairs, we'll start to tee that up. On the chairs, what do you guys recommend in terms, is that something like you think you would go research? Should we ask Stephen, unfortunately, Stephen left, but is that something like Steve and Teresa, or is that something you guys have ideas on?
I wish
What's
she
your
would have been here. I would have had a
thoughts?
question. What's the typical, does anybody happen to know the typical time that somebody would be sitting in that chair? That's a big difference aspect.
That's a good
Well,
question.
there are chairs designed just for that use, and they facilitate setup and tear down. They're ganged and they have trucks that, right now, we're doing a lot of extra labor to put up an inferior chair.
Yeah, I typically think about the wedding type chairs that are really thin, small plastic. They're heavy. They're heavier duty though. I mean,
Can't do that for 8-hour continuing.
is it for sitting for you?
Right.
Yeah, CME course.
Yeah, I'm thinking of really,
I
I'm
think that
thinking,
should be a staff function
You
to
think?
research, not
That's
a
gotta be
volunteer
a top
function.
priority. And the
But
whole-
again, I think, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
The whole numbering system, it's all kind of done by hand.
Yeah.
okay.
But I think, what we need to do is, if we just make this general suggestion to Sharon and her staff,
Okay.
we have to avoid the situation where we say you need to bring back a different colored rock. So I think if we have some criteria that we want to put around it, like it should be, I think we need to try to influence outcome, and maybe have some rough pricing, because my concern is if we don't do that and then get it in front of the commissioners to make sure that it's considered for the budget, we're going to have the same conversation a year from now.
2 years from
One thing, make sure when you do, watch the size of the chairs.
Yeah, that
Because
was.
if you use these particular chairs now, for me, I would lose 150 seats. It would
Right.
be critical. So right now, we could put 900 people.
So Steve was
down.
saying
Usually we
900,
do
yeah.
50. If the new chairs come in and we're down to 750, that's going to really make a difference.
So
That's part of the criteria.
And that's the thing, so, we're expecting more from a group of people that don't have this level of expertise, like Dennis has, that says, we really need to look at width and depth and those kind of things, right?
Space. And also, so it's, the priority is footprint and comfort and also storage space. I would
Exactly.
assume.
No, I think those are the three of, there might be one or two others, but that's a big three.
What were they again? Footprint, storage space, and what was the third one? Comfort.
Yeah.
Probably put that first, but.
And so I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit more pricey because we're asking for a lot. And so, we need to kind of do a cost-benefit trade-off analysis to convince people to invest the money. And I think we heard some of that today. I mean, just Dennis providing some ad hoc comments about, what the possibilities are that Richard and Kyle have already started to explore is very exciting. And Peter's been talking about this as long as I've known him.
Might do a chair fundraising.
Yeah,
Name a chair.
Well, I'm envisioning.
that's right.
Constituents, they would donate.
See-
We're gonna get new chairs, help buy us new chairs.
I'm
Oh, yeah, I know
envisioning
they'll
Section
$100.
A sponsored by Mug and
Dennis
Spoon.
saying-
Section B sponsored by Cooter Brown. No, I'm just making that up, but I do like the idea of thinking outside the box on
Yeah.
You get
ways
first
to.
dibs on your chair for any event.
That's
but you have to
interesting
pay.
too, actually. That's
We're looking
that's a
into those
very
little cushions now, they
that's
give people when they walk in. Right. To sit on, because they're 90 minutes sitting in that chair.
Yeah.
Like
You
in-
said up to 8
like in
hours, your
football
medical 8
stadium.
hours. So that,
And
is
our
that,
older folks aren't getting any smaller.
interesting.
No.
Really,
All right.
problem.
Let's do this. Let's maybe I hate to keep volunteering Steve, but maybe Steve and you and I could sit down with Sharon and her team and kind of talk through the criteria a little
Yeah,
bit.
and I think we need to, kind of get some experts to meet with us, that understand this stuff, I
Like who?
mean, well, like, I don't know, if Dennis may know people, I don't know, or look at other venues and what they have. I mean, you can't go to like the high school auditorium, but, places where chairs are set up, what do they do? Because I have no
Would
idea.
we do that, or would we
Talk
sit
to a
down with
convention
Sharon
center
and?
Architect, they'll know exactly. And how
Have you
many,
looked at Dover to the casino, you look at their chairs that they have inside, they're very comfortable.
Okay,
They wouldn't be cheap, I'm sure.
all right. All right, we'll look at kind of next steps there. And, okay, and then we talked about priorities. We deferred Grove Park priorities. Any other comments from committee members? Okay, how about any other citizen comments just before we close out? Okay, just, in terms of citizen comments, I just wanted to welcome Edward here in a different role now. So Edward has been sworn in as one of our new commissioners, and he is serving as kind of a liaison here to the committee. And so I don't know, Edward, if you have anything to say. Maybe you have a new executive director. I'm not sure everybody knows that, for Main Street, and a new president. So maybe those folks will both be invited, obviously, here in the future.
Unfortunately, our new executive director had a schedule conflict, but I would
Okay.
expect that he will be joining Carol here at these meetings. And our new president, Greer Manival, who is an architect by trade, so she's got some unique perspective as well. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for your service here, and we hope to continue to see you and get your input too. So in terms of action items, here's what I captured. Steve, you're going to go ahead, Steve Sheffer, you're going to go ahead and do some more research on hourly rates based on the feedback we have and come with some additional recommendations at the next meeting. Steven's going to send us the booking info just so we can continue to get an idea of who's booking and when and how. Let's see, I think myself and Steve are going to just sit down with Sharon and determine the path ahead to figure out how we do get some new chairs in. Carol, I think you're going to work with Richard and Kyle to set up a meeting with the hotel motel working group, correct? Okay, cool. And then Peter will also be involved with that to maybe take on an action to consider other events or theme-based events we could have maybe with the hotels and for the town. Like I always think about the model being Sea Witch. Like, is there a Sea Witch equivalent, not Sea Witch itself, but something like in March, that becomes kind of the March, right, event. To me, it's Awesome Con or Retro Con or one of those. That would be so cool. But anyway,
Hey, as long as you get William Shatner to come, right?
get William Shatner. He agreed to marry me, by the way. But I'll tell you that story off the record. So,
Association,
Restaurant Festival. What's that?
there's an association of fairs and festivals.
Oh, of
Book
course.
about
Oh
that
my gosh,
thing,
you
and
guys
it
know
has
so much.
So many events. It has every event that produced Sea Witch is in there. It's got every event produced
Oh,
anywhere
really?
in the United States.
See, you guys, you'll have so many good ideas. All right. In terms of the next meeting date, let's see. If it's okay with everybody, I would like to have a meeting in October. Any suggestions on when we have an October meeting? If somebody has their calendar up, what looks good? Is Monday or Wednesday better for folks?
I'm good both days. I'm good.
How about the 16th? Would the 16th work or the 23rd for me? Pardon me?
General membership meeting for us.
Is the 16th? Okay, how about the 23rd? That's right before Sea Witch. I know. How about the 15th? It's a Tuesday. 15th at 9:30?
That works.
That works.
Yeah, right now it's good.
Okay.
That actually works.
Okay,
yeah.
so,
Tuesday, 15th, 9:30.
9:30.
15th at 9:30. All right, set. And let's see, we have the next week. Okay, any other final comments from anyone? Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.